Good morning. Today, you are the show. This was Patricia Fripp's idea. All of us have interesting stories, and she said she wanted us to share the stories we come home and say to whomever, you won't believe what happened today. It could be something that was interesting, coincidental, unbelievable. It could be a mistake. It could be a success. It could be personal. It could be professional. No more than 4 minutes or you're getting the hook. And there is no heckling because we don't have time for it. And we have a lot of people that great stories, but Patricia picked several people to start their stories. No one is taken more than 4 minutes. And I have my trusty timer here, and Tony's going to help me on that one too. So with that, I present to you our first, Carl Walsh.
Carl, come off mute.
If you had walked into the audition studio for the Amundsen Theater with me that morning, you too would have immediately seen the great man himself, backlit by the morning sun pouring in through the high place windows. There he was, Franco Zeffirelli. If you don't remember him, the director of the famous 1968 filmed version of Romeo and Juliet. Yep. You know the one, right? Da, 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 da. Yeah, that one. Well, first of all, he was blonde. A blonde Italian? I didn't know that existed. He was seeing me for his stage production of Hamlet, starring Richard Gere. I sat before him at the small table. Zeffirelli, remember, he was known for taking unknown actors and making them known. And this was my shot. This was my big, big shot. Well, he looked down at my resume, looked at me, and then he said, "Oh, good. Royal Academy of Dramatic Art." Yeah, that's right. He spoke like an English aristocrat. Who knew? "What am I going to do with you?" My confidence crumbled. I thought my RADA training would be a leg up. So I looked deeply into his eyes and I said, "Anything you want." All right, make yourself available on Friday. My heart raced. Have a look at Osric. My spirit sank again. I knew Osric. It's a small, obscure role. But then I remembered it could be a gem of a comedic cameo. I knew I could do it. I knew I could steal the scene from Richard Gere. Spirits back up. Well, I worked on that tiny role he had given me for several days. On Friday, I performed it for him with the stage manager monotonously feeding me Hamlet's lines. Now, I wasn't great, but I wasn't bad. And I got the role. In a very short period, I had gone through feelings of high worth and fallen to bankruptcy, then back to high worth and down to bankruptcy again and back to high worth. But by drawing on what I knew I could do, and using the energy created by stress, I had pushed myself to a new level. I didn't yet know my full worth, but I was getting there. Back to you, Susan.
Thank you. Well timed. Well done. Thank you. And now for our second story, picked by Patricia Fripp, because he worked so hard on it. Our pal and NSA member, Will Rogers, Randall Reed.
Good morning. Go back with me 90 years to 1933. I've already starred in about a dozen talking movies. And I'll remind you that my wife is Betty Blake Rogers. And we're living just on the north edge of Santa Monica on our 200-acre ranch. And I always call her Blake. So here we go. Blake, you won't believe what happened this morning. You know, all these movies I've been making, 3 or 4 a year, every one of them has been based on a book that somebody else wrote. Well, we've had some great ones, but they've all been picked out by a producer or a director. I've been saying for a couple of years, Blake, that I would like a chance to pick out a book myself and make a movie from. Well, but before I tell you about that, I need to remind you of the great success that some of our that's come our way because of those movies we've already made. No, Will, you don't have time. I know how you love to tell about Hattie McDaniels and Stephen Fetchit in the movie Judge Priest, and how Janet Gaynor was your daughter in State Fair, and Mickey Rooney in another one. And you always brag about how you advised Joel McRae to buy land because they aren't making any more of it. But your friend up in San Francisco said you only have 4 minutes. She's the one known as the mingling maven. She not only knows how to work a room, she knows how to work a stopwatch. So besides, I want to know your exciting news from this morning. Oh, yes. Well, before we started filming, I was sitting there with John Ford and Sam Goldwyn, and I just casually suggested that I would like a chance to pick out a book myself and turn it into a movie. Well, they kind of looked at each other, and finally Sam said to me, well, sure, we've got several books here. We'll let you read a few and decide on one you like. Wait, Will, hold on a minute. Did you say that they would let you read a few books? Well, you won't believe what just happened. About an hour ago, 2 men in a truck pulled up on our driveway. I was in the yard and saw them, and one yelled, Mrs. Rogers, Sam Goldwyn asked us to deliver some books for your husband. We have 10, and I interrupted him, and I told him, I'll just take them in the house and put them on the dining room table. Then he said, Mrs. Rogers, you didn't let me finish. We have 10 crates of books. There's at least 50 books in each crate. So, Will, if you want to start reading, they're stacked on the front porch. Well, gosh, Blake, I don't have time to read even 5 books, let alone 500 books. I'll just have to apologize to Sam. So the next morning, I walked into Mr. Goldwyn's office and told him I was sorry, and I offered to reimburse him for the cost of the 2 men in a truck. And he said, don't worry about it, Will. We've got a warehouse full of these books. We get about 100 a day from authors who want us to make a movie from them. In fact, here's a script I got yesterday for a musical play called Green Grow the Lilacs. It's written by a man you probably know, Lynn Riggs. He's from your hometown, Claremore. It's all about farmers in Indian Territory. It includes a love story where a cowboy falls in love with the farmer's daughter. You know, Will, you might want a starring role. Well, since Lynn Riggs wrote it, I bet it would be a good movie, but I'll pass on it because I don't sing good enough to be in a musical production. I would make a suggestion. It's made instead of Green Grow the Lilacs, change the name to Oklahoma.
Oh. That is an amazing story. Wow. So Will Rogers changed the name. Oh, really? Okay. Our next person up, and I don't know, I only can see 20 people on the screen. Is Janice here yet?
Yes, she's here. Janice.
Yeah, Janice, I can't see you on the screen.
I'm
Would you
here.
take it away? There you are. Okay.
Okay. excuse me, I was slurping my breakfast. Many of you know that I teach Zumba fitness, but what many of you don't know is that after 4 years of being a computer programmer, I packed my bags and moved to LA because I had a dream of becoming a paid professional dancer. I'll never forget my father's words to me when I said, I'm quitting my professional computer job to go be a starving artist. And he said to me, a nice Jewish girl doesn't work as a dancer, and you owe it to me to live a normal life. As my time progressed in LA, overall, I spent 2 years there. And as you know, starving artists have to do a lot of starving artist jobs. So this computer programmer took a job as a receptionist in a law firm for $5 an hour under the table. And this law firm in particular had was an entertainment law firm. So they had a lot of famous clients, including Priscilla Presley. Now, Priscilla never came in, but when she called on the phone and identified herself, she would go, "Is Priscilla calling?" in her little soft, wispy voice. But I'll never forget what's most exciting is I'll never forget the day that Milton Berle came into the office, and he was just as fun and funny and nice as he was on stage. He walked around, he said hi and joked around with every single employee in the office. He was such a doll. And so that $5 an hour job afforded me some famous moments. And that was just the most exciting period of that whole 2 years.
Well, Uncle Milty was nice, and that's something we all need to remember. However famous we get, we should never forget to be nice to everyone.
Yes.
Okay, next,
you.
Thank you, Janice. And next up, Chef Ricky, where are you? Unmute.
You know, I guess I read in the paper the other day that Zoom is laying off a lot of people, and I can see the effects of it right now. Anyway, my story is about the 2 times I took my daughter to see a circus. The first time she was about 12 years old, and it was the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus at the Arco Arena north of Sacramento. And I was dressed in a very loud Hawaiian shirt and being my usual shy and reticent self, when a little guy in a 3-piece suit comes up and taps me on the shoulder and says, "How would you like to perform in the center ring of the greatest show on earth?" And I said, "Man, I'm with you." And 5 minutes later, I was down in the center ring of the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, throwing plates back and forth with the lead clown and getting laughs. So the second time, I realized when I was a Lion, Sparta, they only have Lions clubs out in the sticks. They don't have Rotary like I'm in now. But there hadn't been in the big town of Sparta, there hadn't been a circus in 50 years. So I decided as a fundraiser for the Lions Club to bring the one ring European style circus, Culpeper and Merriweather, they were called. And we had a 5 o'clock show and a 7 o'clock show. And the predominant people who came, you know, probably 80% of the crowd was Hispanic farm workers. And at 4 o'clock, I thought I was dead because apparently Hispanic people don't buy things in advance. They show up and pay cash. But at 4:30, they started coming in, and I had 2 sold out performances. We made a lot of money for this Sparta Lions Club. So they had a baby elephant named Barbara. Of course, that's from Barbar. And I was sitting in the front row with my daughter when Barbara comes walking in, and my daughter is holding a big canister of popcorn in her lap, and Barbara's trunk goes over and hoovers half of her popcorn, and you should have seen the look on that child's face. That's back to you.
That I love that they named the elephant Barbara, and apparently Barbara likes popcorn instead of peanuts. So we learned something new. Okay, our next, thank you, Ricky. And our next, and this is someone that Patricia said she loved his story, Mr. Gary McKenzie, you are up next. What wowed you?
Yes, had you been with me last November, you would have saw me leaving a client's office on the 14th floor. As I stepped into the elevator, a very jovial individual came in behind me. He said, "Hey, how's your day?" I said, "You know, it's a good day, having fun." And then I did something uncharacteristic for me. In an elevator, I extended my hand and said, my name is Gary. The person, amazing, my name's Gary also. Two Garys in the same elevator, how unusual. And then he proceeded to tell me a story. I said, I currently work for the district attorney's office. However, I wasn't always with the DA's office. For 30 years, I was with the Modesto Police Department. I said, hey, really? Well, you might know my oldest brother, Gerald McKenzie. Really? You're the chief's brother? My gosh, great to meet you. And I said, I still remember the first time he spoke with me because he hired me. I remember he told me how police officers are supposed to act. Oh, and then I remember a time when I kind of made a little misstep, but he had my back and he saved my career. He said, and I remember the chewing out I received in private from him also. And then years later, after he had retired, and I was receiving an award from the Veterans of Foreign Wars as an outstanding individual of the year, remember, there he was in the audience. Wow. He leaned forward, he said, Gary, one of my biggest regrets is I never took the time to tell your brother how much I appreciated him. And when I saw he had passed away, I realized I'd lost my chance forever. And I thought, I'm going to use this in one of my stories because I'm working on a new keynote speech called Tell You Can't. And it's about not missing opportunities, not putting things off. Now, this is a perfect story because he put off telling my brother how much he appreciated his support until he can't. Back to you.
Gary, you made a very good point, as you would expect me to say, talk to people in elevators because you never know. And just telling you his story gave him a chance to get that off his chest. So yes, tell people the day after Valentine's Day that you care. Thank you, Gary. It's a good reminder. And now we are going to have a story from Mr. Jim Prost.
Thank you. Thank
And
you,
I'm
Suzanne.
timing you guys, so don't worry.
Okay, I'll speak real fast. This is my honey. You won't believe what happened. One Christmas, we had guests over to our house for drinks and dinner, and my wife was in the kitchen and I was in the front room with our two dogs. And all of a sudden, the dogs started barking at the window and the blinds. And when I opened the blinds in the window, the entire marching band from our local high school was spread out across the front yard playing Christmas carols, and the dogs barked along with them. Ran into the kitchen, said, honey, oh, actually at this point in time, she probably heard it, but honey, you won't believe what's happening. You've got to see and hear the entire local marching band serenading our guests and dogs with Christmas carols. Back to you, Susan.
Were the dogs on key?
No, they were not.
Okay. That's good.
Thanks
Well,
for asking.
that is a unique story. And now for our next story, we are going to have the pitch freak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, Alan Garber talks more about what he coughed up in the morning than the entirety of all these presentations from professional speakers today. So I don't know how fast you guys are able to go through this process. I'm waiting for the heckles, Alan. Can we start right away?
No heckling, no heckling.
I was told I can only heckle when the pitch freak is on.
All right, very
So go for it.
All right, so look, it's 1999. It is summertime in Aruba, the island of Aruba, 17 miles north of Venezuela.
Been
And
there.
I am in a shopping district on the island and having a bite to eat. And right next to me, as I'm having this, where I'm eating this beautiful Aruban breakfast. Bonbini, by the way, is welcome in Aruba. Bonbini. And so I'm eating my breakfast, and it's a little late in the day. It's a brunch time, and I'm noticing a little traffic coming by on a dirt road right next to the restaurant as I'm looking in the window. Cars will go by as I'm eating. Not a problem. I'm enjoying my meal. Not a big deal. Cars, just every once in a while, a car goes by. And then something out of my eye just kind of piqued my interest. I kind of looked around and I noticed that there was a slow walking person in the middle of the street, And this is what he was doing. He's walking. I said, this person's walking like this. And the waitress comes by me and we're looking at this person walking down the street doing this. I thought, what's this guy doing? And he had just a pair of shorts on. I think some flip flops and some shorts, and that's it. Just walking down the street just like this. We looked at each other and I said that, I think he's driving. I think he's driving down the street. And she says, I think you're right. I think he is driving down the street. I said, so straight, this guy just kept on walking and driving here down the street here, and I continued to eat my breakfast. I didn't think much about it. I was just about wrapped up with the breakfast here, and I paid the bill and wrapped things up here and walked outside. I went out the back side of the restaurant instead of the front side of the restaurant because there's an exit there. I thought to myself, I wonder what happened to that guy. Such a strange thing. This guy walking in shorts, nothing here, seemed like a reasonable person just walking down the street here, driving, walking, weird. I walked across the area where he was walking, and then I walked down it's like a little shopping area in the middle of Aruba. Aruba is a little shopping district area. And as I was walking, for some reason, I got curious and looked down an alley. As I'm looking down the alley, I kid you not, I see the guy walking down the alley, or I should say, sorry, driving down the alley. And he's driving down the alley, and I couldn't believe this. I was just watching him drive down the alley. I thought, wait, what's going on? And then all of a sudden, you're not gonna believe this. He looks to his right and he starts to back in to a space with his, he's backing in, he's walking backwards, into an open space, he's walking backwards, and he's doing the whole checking the mirrors, all these various things in this space. And he's pulling in his car. Oh my gosh, terrific job, except one problem. He pulls back out into the alleyway. Why? Because his imaginary car was too big to fit into the space. So he pulls back in here, parks the car, terrific, opens the door, gets out, walking towards me, and I can't believe what I'm seeing. And of course, you can all guess what happens next. He's walking towards me. I'm baffled. I have no idea. He turns around. And he sets the alarm for his imaginary car. And that is my honey, you won't believe this story from Aruba. Back to you, Madam President.
Well told and acted. Thank you.
I got
That
Aruba
was-
stories.
That was great. We just got a little note in the chat. When you are not speaking, would you kindly mute? Apparently someone was on the phone, which is a demerit from this former teacher. And we'd like you not to do that. And now, can we please hear from Betty Taish? She's still on. Are you there, Betty?
She's still there, but I don't see her.
Okay, well,
I am here. No, I am
oh,
here.
good.
Was I supposed to tell a story?
Well, we all were, Betty. That's what the
Oh,
announcement. Well,
Oh,
we'll come
sorry.
back to you. We'll come back to you. I sent you 2 emails to specify, but we can come back to you.
no, I can talk. I can talk.
Okay, you have 4 minutes.
Okay. I was in high school in Syracuse, New York, West Genesee High. And that's in New York. And I wanted to be a doctor, but of course you couldn't be a doctor in the late 50s, early 60s. So I was told I should be a nurse. Well, my sister-in-law was a nurse, so that was fine. And there's a 3-year nursing school in Syracuse called St. Joseph's. And my mom worked there in the bookkeeping department and said, oh, I want you to go to this school. Well, we didn't have any money to send me to college. So I said, well, I'll look into it, but I did not want to go there because she would see all the little nurses with their caps at lunch. And she was so proud if I would go there. And I said, no. So I looked at other schools, University of Buffalo, University of Rochester, and I did get a scholarship to Buffalo. Rochester was too expensive. So I went to a 4-year nursing school, but we had no money. They sent me $5 a month, a week. And for all of college, I never used a vending machine ever. I was the RA in the dorm, and then I became the head RA of all the dorms at there. It was just amazing. But one of the main reasons I did not want to go to the St. Joseph's Nursing School, in their dress code, you could not wear to a formal anything without capped sleeves. I had one little dress that had little spaghetti straps. And for that reason, oh, no, well, other reasons too, I would not go to St. Joseph's Nursing School because I couldn't wear my only and my favorite dress. So I became a nurse, and then I became in California a family nurse practitioner, one of the pioneers in California. And that's my career of being a nurse. So back to you.
And it started with a dress code and spaghetti straps, having had that spaghetti strap dress, and that I couldn't be a lawyer in the old days because we could only be teachers, nurses, or secretaries. Totally get it. And now up with a great story that will amuse us completely. Is Bert Hill still here? There you are, Bert.
Yes, I'm still here. I
Okay,
haven't
you
made up
got,
a story that I was just an audience. I didn't make up a story.
okay, well, how about this? We'll take someone else and you think of one of, you don't have to make it up. It's something that actually happened that wowed you. Well, let's go
Probably by
to,
surprise.
by surprise, we'll come back to you. Tim Durkin, you are a great storyteller. I'll be timing. Give us one of your best.
Siri, start a timer for 4 minutes. I was in Springdale, Arkansas, and I had just talked to a friend and Springdale, Arkansas is in the middle of nowhere, actually 25 minutes from Bentonville. There were no hotels in Bentonville. I had a deal at Walmart, and I was sitting there, and a friend had just called me the day before telling me about somebody named Carolyn Mace, spelled M-Y-S-S. She said, you got to look this lady up. She's absolutely amazing. She saved my life, and I can't wait to tell you about it. She's a medical intuitive. And I said, what's a medical intuitive? She said, you talk on the phone with her and she tells you what's wrong with her. I said, go on with you. That can't happen. She said she found something that the doctors had completely missed, and it was a serious injury. And then I looked up Carolyn Mace, and there's all kinds of stories about her talking to people on the phone and discovering this. So I'm very, very skeptical. And then I find out that she is supported in her beliefs by a person by the name of Dr. Norm Shealy, S-H-E-A-L-Y. He's a neurosurgeon. He is also the inventor of the TENS unit, which my wife is familiar with. It's spinal stimulation, and it reduces pain. It's a miracle device. He invented it. So anyway, he's giving her endorsements. I can't believe it. I'm sitting in Springdale, couldn't get a hotel, but the group that hired me, the board of directors of the group, were all there. And there was about 12 of them. And I happened to be sitting next to this lady, random seating. And I said, I just heard about Carolyn Mace. Have you ever heard of her? And she said, yes, I have. And I said, well, I just got to tell you how skeptical I am. I can't believe all of the things that she talks about. And they claim that she does. I mean, how? And what's interesting is she's actually supported and endorsed by Dr. Norm Shealy. And I said, I looked him up, and he does do a lot of medicine, and he's a neuroscientist and all that. And the woman looked at me and she said, you can believe everything she says. I said, why? She said, because I am Dr. Norm Shealy's executive secretary for 17 years. There's 350 million people in the United States. I'm struggling with this. And the woman that confirmed it is sitting next to me in Springdale, Arkansas. And I thought, wow. By the way, Carolyn Mace is still out there. She writes books.
Yes.
She does not do medical intuitive now. Susan, you know her. She's a Chicago girl. Yep.
Yeah,
That's
big
it.
fun. And it goes to, you never know who you're sitting next to, which is my mother always said, don't talk about people in restaurants. But I think she was thinking Chicago Mafia payback. So that's okay. Well, thank you. That is a you never know story.
Yep.
How about let us hear from Christine.
Christine Torrington.
You have to go off mute, Christine. Yeah, you have to
Right,
go
I'm
off. There
unmute.
you go.
Unmute.
All
There
right.
we go. Thank you. Hi there. Well, I'm temporarily not visible to myself with this computer thing being strangely not working at the moment. There I am, sort of. I'm Christine Torrington, and I began my career as a zoology pre-med major undergrad. I've done all kinds of things. I've traveled all over the world, learned lots of language. What am I going to do with this? And all of a sudden, I discovered that there was the thing called photography, because I found that when I take snapshots of people or whatever, if I allowed them to be and didn't try to manipulate anyone to do anything that I was asking them to do, they would be incredibly happy, comfortable, and it was absolutely amazing how effective that was in terms of my ability to get pictures that people wanted. And it went from that to a career where I was photographing stars and I was photographing all kinds of people. And that held true forever. The fact that I speak lots of languages just enabled me to communicate with people, learning a few polite words. I didn't even want to know the bad ones. And what happened was that I discovered that, lo and behold, I developed a whole career just by being me. I got into, I could go into medical school. I applied a couple places. There were lots of places I couldn't, and careers I could have had, but the photography came about because of the fact that people allowed me to just capture them as they were, if I enabled them to do that naturally. So I developed a 6-figure career in a few years. That's not bragging, it just because I never expected it. And I've been blessed by having the opportunity to travel all over the world, and people invited me to be a part of their lives and their experiences. And music did the same thing, lots of songs and lots of languages. But the bottom line of the whole story is it was all because of the fact that I let people be who they were, as they were. I let them tell me their stories, and I let them communicate to me the things that were most important to them. And I connected with them a lot of times on simple little words and songs and things that weren't there to impress. But anyway, I'm right now on this communication. I can't see myself. This is a downside of what I'm doing right now, because I really can't see it. But I can just say that I'm very blessed to be a part of this group and this program, because I've met so many people like yourself who really inspire me.
Oh,
And
good.
meanwhile, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to everybody. I was the second woman member of this group, and it's been a blessing ever since. So
Okay, we can
Sorry.
see you. And Bert is now ready. And then John Math will, excuse me, will be next. But Bert, take it away.
Okay. Most of you, in fact, all of you know me as a bicyclist and a progressive and someone who is promoting a lot of clear changes in our society. But when I arrived in San Francisco, I was still an environmentalist, but I got to San Francisco in 1972 after graduating from the University of Washington. And I couldn't find a job. And I eventually, about a month after I started, I found a job at Bechtel Corporation. Now, those of you who don't know, Bechtel is the largest engineering construction company in the world, and it was headquartered down on Beale Street. And I got to working there. And but in Bechtel, you had to be an engineer of some sort. Well, I didn't graduate from college with engineering, but I learned a lot of it there and started. And so eventually was transferred to building power plants. And there were nuclear power plants. So my first project was in 1977. I went to Susquehanna And after that, I've been there for 3 years. We were transferred to Colstrip, Montana, eastern Montana, 40 below in the winter. It's quite a place. I had worked for a while on units 1 and 2, and we were building that actively 3 and 4. It was the cleanest coal-fired power plant in the world. The scrubber, actually, which was the thing that cleaned up the air, took about 1/3 of the power generation to operate it, to make it that clean. Very, very new technology at that time, working on it. Well, I was in charge of cost on the project, and periodically I had to make trips back to San Francisco. Well, needless to say, in the middle of winter of 1981, I was called back to San Francisco for a series of meetings. And it just coincidentally happened that that was the day of a major blizzard in eastern Montana. Now, if you've ever lived in Montana or North Dakota or South Dakota or those areas, you know that this is no joke. It is these are serious. It can get down to 40 below. It's
1 minute.
really 1 minute.
Yeah.
Okay. To make it really short, then I was driving to the airport, and I had to take a back road to get there. This car stopped. I couldn't get out. I was stuck with the thing. It would not start. So I tried to figure out what I could do. What can I do? And so I looked at my toolkit, and I determined what it probably was a frozen gas line. So I got down under the car in this storm, used my flare, heated the whole line, and especially the fuel pump, heated it, got in the car, turned it on, it started. And I was able to make my way to the airport, even with enough time to fly back to San Francisco.
That is a honey. You won't believe this, that you're under a car heating it. Thank goodness nothing exploded. And we're so happy you're here to tell us the story.
Well, I didn't have choices.
Well, and now John Mathers is going to entertain us with his You Never Know story.
So all of us have seen cowboy movies, and we've seen stampedes. Does it ever bother you that when you look at the stampede coming at you and the camera is right there at hoof level, somehow they miss the camera? Well, I had a job working on a ranch in northern Wyoming near Yellowstone, and we did the people that worked on the ranch hated the forest rangers, and they hated the tourists going into Yellowstone. So when we did our roundup, we brought 250 head of cattle right through one of the tourist camps. All of these people in their tents and their cars at 4:30 in the morning. And I discovered why it is that the camera never actually gets touched. The cows shit on everything, but they avoid, they won't run over a tent or a person. They'll just shit on everything. And they did. So I can tell you lots more stories about working on the ranch, but that's an education about cowboys and stampedes.
Thank you. I will never go to a ranch after that. Okay, we now have, how about Alan Garber? We're going to time you, and Pitch Freak won't heckle you.
Okay.
First Amendment rights, please. First Amendment, please.
All right. My story is about my mother, and Pitch Freak reminded me of her when he was talking about Aruba. So my parents used to go to Aruba every year for a couple of weeks, or actually it became a month, always in the winter, January and February. So 1979 or 1980, I was 29 years old living in Houston, Texas, and I decided I was going to surprise my parents in Aruba. So I flew to Aruba, found a flea bag hotel, and I knew that they liked to gamble. So I went around to all the casinos in Aruba looking for my parents. And I found my mother sitting at a blackjack table, which I knew that she would be at a blackjack table somewhere. And I went up behind her and I put my arms around her back and around her front, and I kissed her from behind. And she presumed it was one of her friends, and she turned around and said, "Oh my God, it's my son." So she was very happy. My father was there. We then, they made me move out of my Fleabag hotel and stay with them at their place, which they had a timeshare. And the next day we were in the timeshare, and my mother had noticed that I had brought some marijuana with me to Aruba. My mother said, "Oh, can I try some of that?" I said, "Sure." And so I rolled a joint and we smoked a joint in the room, or right outside the room. And my father declined, although he was a smoker, but he declined. So then we go to the casino a little bit after that. And we're sitting at the casino table. My mother's gambling and I'm gambling. And all of a sudden, she blurts out to everybody on the table, "Have any of you ever tried marijuana? This shit is really good." That's my story. And it's
Words
true.
we never thought our mothers would say. That is a perfect story. I'm very quickly, because of technical difficulties, Christine, you literally have 15 seconds to finish. You got to come off mute if you
Okay,
want.
I'm off of mute. Thank you. Just wanted to say before I was totally distracted by not being visible, but I've been in all over the world. Everywhere I go, I've found that there's more than I ever imagined to find out and share with people in all languages and all kinds of things. And music has been one of them that's been a big one for me. And it's just a blessing to be here with all of you because
You've
there's
already
something to
said-
learn from everyone.
All right. Thank you. You said that. We're done. Okay. Let's go to, and I hope he's ready, Brian Head. Principal Brian Head.
Oh, hi there. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
It was a wet February back in 1980, and I went into a bookstore and picked up a teacher's newspaper and looked at the overseas jobs section and saw this job in the Paradise Island of Bermuda. And just for fun, I thought, I'll apply for this just to see what happens. A few weeks later, I'm in the Bermuda tourist office in Savile Row, London. There's beautiful posters on the wall, beaches, it looks wonderful. And I'm thinking to myself, I've got no chance of getting this job. Anyway, I walk in and there's two gentlemen there sitting in Bermuda shorts. And they say to me, "Well, congratulations, Mr. Head. There was about 1,100 applicants for this job, and it's now between you and another guy." Wow, I thought, there's a chance that I might get this job after all. And they said, one of the requirements for the job is, of course, that people are single, which I knew in advance. And they told me this complicated story about how they'd hired someone and he brought out his girlfriend and there were all kinds of problems. So I said to the gentleman, I leaned forward and said, "I'd like to assure you, gentlemen, that there's no girlfriends, ex-girlfriends, ex-wives or wives hiding around the corner." And they both leaned forward and let out a sigh of relief. And then they asked me a very difficult question. They said, "Well, Mr. Head, you know it does rain a lot in Bermuda." And I said, "In that case, I'll bring my Burberry Mac, which I'd folded on the chair." And they said, "Do you know, Mr. Head, that's just the kind of raincoat for Bermuda." So I knew I'd got the job.
That's good.
And that changed my life. I left England in 1982 and went to Bermuda for 7 years. And then 7 years after that came to America. Little things can make all the difference.
A little thing, but that's a good commercial for Burberry. You ought to let them know about that. And you know what? The next person up, Claudia, I saw you here. Are you ready? Can you unmute and tell us your wow story?
Well, I have a hard time getting on planes because I get very nervous. I'm fine on a plane, but so I'm getting on a plane one day and some guy is going down the aisle, shaking hands with everybody, and he passes the seat that I'm trying to get settled in. And I shook his hand without even looking at him. And then I finally got seated, turned around to see who it was. And it was the President Carter, whose term had just finished. So he's coming back down the aisle now. And I said, "Excuse me, President Carter, I'm so sorry to disturb you, but I just shook your hand without looking. I'd really like to shake your hand when I'm looking at you." And he stopped and he made me stand up. He said, "I'm going to ask you 2 questions." He goes, "What was the most recently you're very proud of?" And I said, "Well, I won a speech contest for the Banking Association." And he said quietly to me, "And what's the thing you find most challenging right now?" And I said, "You know, in business, and I'm a manager, they think that retardation sets in with pregnancy. I am 7 months pregnant, and the reason I wear these loose clothes is so they won't know." And he goes, "I think that's a great idea." And then he raises his voice and he says, "I'd like to announce to everybody on this plane that this young lady is 7 months pregnant." Nobody else had ever known. I mean, I hadn't said it to anybody. So President Carter was the first person, except for my family, to announce that I was pregnant.
That is a great story. Oh my goodness. And I hope that baby knows that they had a presidential welcome.
Yeah.
That is a great, thank you, Claudia. That is an oh wow. Okay, well, how about next? And we're going to have to go a little bit more, maybe cut down to 3 because we have a few people left. Dr. Tom, you still here? Can someone help me? Tony, can you see?
Yeah,
Is
I don't see Tom out there, so.
Okay, so, and in that case, let us hear from Doug.
Well, I didn't get the email, but I knew this was coming after you were starting. And it's despite the fact that I've already bought your books, I'm still getting called on anyway. So here I was sitting at my desk and I get called on by the famous Suzanne to do a extemporaneous speech about something that I have no idea about. I have no idea this was going to happen. And so now I have to pull out of my, yes, I see that, Craig. I have to pull out of my hat, which I don't even have on, a speech about something I've done. So it's amazing what happens when one is not prepared for something. It's amazing what happens, how it just comes at you out of the blue, just like this one. So this is kind of an amazing event that I'm called on to give a speech to a group I've not spoken to, and by Suzanne. Isn't that amazing?
Oh my gosh.
Back to
That's
you.
the best one so far. And is there more? You have had a very interesting journey.
I have. I had an interesting journey. And what most people don't know is I got these 7 dogs in my head and they're always yakking at me about something. Do this, do that. Why did you do that? You know, come on, let's go do something else. So it's quite a trip that's going on here. Back to you, Susan.
Thank you. Yes, you know, it was in the notes that we received about the meeting that we were the stars, and Patricia announced it. And I think everyone got the email, but I would apologize if you didn't because I wasn't in charge of that part. So we do have a few more people. Mike Milstein, can you unmute and tell us a wonderful oh wow story?
Mike,
I-
can you hear?
Mike, can you hear? Mike Milstein? Okay, all right. Well then, how about Bill Buchanan, who I know has great stories?
Thank you, Suzanne. I don't know how great this is, but I didn't get the email. That's okay. I'll do the best I can. Go back to like 1983. Claire and I had been in the San Francisco FBI office for about 5 years, I think it was, something like that. And one day at the end of the workday, I had to go over to Berkeley Resident Agency, which is a little satellite office of the San Francisco field office, on some international counterterrorism matter. I forget what it was. Walked in the office and was talking with some of the other agents. And one of the agents who was working domestic terrorism came running over. He said, "Bill, we're shorthanded. We're doing a surveillance tonight on, I forget, Weather Underground or some of the spinoff groups of the domestic terrorism community. They said, we got a bunch up in South Berkeley and we want to do a surveillance on it. Can you help us out?" I said, well, here I was dressed in my suit, tie, and all that sort of thing. Okay, so we went on over to, they had an RV posted outside of a terrorist safe house. And there were these folks coming and going. I think they had been involved in some bombings locally. So we were at it all night. We were taking photographs and all that sort of thing, trying to identify these people. I dragged back into my little homestead here in Mill Valley and went up to the door just as Claire was going to work in Sausalito for an architect down there. And I said something like, "Honey, you won't bullet." She said, "At least you could have called." And she huffed on out to the driveway, got in a car and took off. Well, what had happened was, when I was over in the Berkeley office before he started the surveillance, I had called the clerk in the San Francisco office. I said, "Please call Claire." This took about a day and a half to work out between us, but we finally did. At least you could have called. So anyway, that's life.
Famous last stories. But you know who I want to hear from? The person that tells us great stories, Pete Ratto.
Yes.
You must have another, you never know, oh wow story.
Gosh, yeah, I got a few, but the problem is with 4 minutes. It'll take me 4 minutes to set some of these things up.
No, it won't, because I'll cut you off.
Give you the story. Do you want to have a story about the garbage business?
We'd love to have a story, but you're only going to get now 3.5 minutes.
3.5 minutes. Well, I'll tell you real quick. We had interestingly, we had a rollover. And one of the things that I had never thought that I would learn how to do is roll trucks back over after they rolled over. And that is a very interesting process. But I had one that happened up on Greenwich Street. And you're saying, this guy doesn't know, isn't it? You know, it's Greenwich. Well, no, in San Francisco, yeah, Greenwich Mean Time, Greenwich Village, but it's Greenwich Street. And we were up on Greenwich Street. One of our trucks rolled over. It was a truck full of roofing material. And so it was really heavy stuff. And the box did not roll over off. This is a debris box truck. So the box detaches. And anyhow, it did not roll over completely. So now we're up there, and we had, at that time, we actually had our own wrecker. We were pretty well equipped to deal with these things. And so we start getting the truck back in shape. We torched off the cable and pulled the truck out, and the truck was not badly damaged. Then we had to deal with a box full of roofing, could be like 6 tons of roofing and a lot of stuff. They're very, very heavy. And so we had done all of our blocking the loads and wrapping cables everywhere. And so we were all set to start riding the box. And so you do this very slowly, of course. And so we were just moving really slowly, and so the box is coming over, it's coming over. And so I thought, oh, now it's more than halfway. I think we got it made where we're going to do this perfectly. And unfortunately, the cable snapped. And, you know, these steel cables are pretty bad when it snaps. They whip around, and if they wrapped around you, they cut you in half. But we were lucky. Nobody got hit by this cable. It was just flying all over the place. But the big problem was when the cable snapped, now the box that was like balanced on its side started to go over. And it ended up going all the way over, and it landed on a Volkswagen Cabriolet. And the thing is, if you were sitting in the driver's seat of that Cabriolet, you would have not gotten hurt. You would not have gotten a scratch. But if you were sitting in the back of that Cabriolet, you would have been squished like a bug. It was just amazing how we sliced that car in half. And then because it had gone all the way over, now it's like, well, what do we do? You know, and I said, well, hey, this car's totaled, man. You know, there's no need to be all careful now. Just get it out of here. So we ended up smashing this car. We smashed like, you know, a foot high, totaled completely. And so we're all standing there looking at our work. And I said, you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to put my business card on this car and say, I'm very sorry, but we bumped your car. And I really wanted to do it. They wouldn't let me. They said, Pete, that's not going to be good. The company's not, won't put us in a good light. You're making fun of this guy's car that was totaled. But yeah, in essence, it was crushed like a bug. And I won't go into the other details, but that was one of my failures. I didn't roll that one over properly, but you know, it's a good story. And the guys that were there love it, you know.
You know what part I love? That you wanted to leave your business card there and that they stopped you from doing that.
Yeah.
Great. Carol Keeley, do you have a story for us?
Wait. Hold on. The punchline is the Volkswagen was crushed like a bug.
Oh, there you go. That's
Crushed like a
right.
bug.
Yeah. There you go. You are right. Carol, do you have a story for us? I think we might have to go down to 2 minutes. You're muted, Carol. You're still muted. Okay, did I miss anyone? And while you're figuring out how to unmute.
Susan, Richard Wank has a story.
Oh, I don't even see Richard here.
No, because we're on mine. Okay.
Okay, all right. Give us a story and then we'll go back to Carol.
Well, good morning, Breakfast Clubbers. Like Christine Torrington, I have done a fair amount of traveling, and like Christine, I speak foreign languages. As a matter of fact, I speak 19 foreign languages. However, only 2 sentences. Please take off all your clothes. My friend will pay. That's it.
That is definitely a 2-minute warning. Okay, let's go back. Carol, are you off of mute? There you are.
I think so. The reflection's so hard on my screen, I couldn't find it. Anyway, I have a story. When I was working and living in Manhattan, New York.
Excuse me, someone's on the phone. Will you kindly mute yourself? Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm happy with the one I got, but
I think
that's
it's
all I
Will
need. Thanks.
Randall. Oh.
Who's on the phone?
Randall.
Randall, mute yourself.
Reader.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, so I was living and working in Manhattan, and my husband at the time said to me, what do you want to do for your birthday? Wherever you want to go in the world, I'll be happy to treat you. And so I thought about it. I grew up in Chicago with blues and jazz, R&B, frequented all the clubs there. And I said to him, oh, wherever Gato Barbieri's playing, I want to be there. He's a famous Argentine sax player. So I go to the concert in a small club, Blue Note, on the Village. And somehow I maneuvered myself with my press passes backstage to meet him. And I loved his percussionist. We talked a long time. And I talked to Gato for a long time. And we took some pictures. I didn't think twice about it. Went home that night. I was so elated. It was the best birthday ever. And then I developed the pictures the next morning, and I saw it was a great picture, but I wanted it to have an autograph. So I FedExed it overnight to Chicago where my sister lived. And I said, go to his concert and get the autograph. She said, okay, I'll try. I said, don't try. You're going to do it. So she goes back. I didn't hear from her for a couple of weeks. All of a sudden, I get this picture with this autograph. I said, why didn't you tell me? She said, well, not only am I now his new doctor, because she was a physical therapy doctor. She said, but we're also dating. So they ended up marrying because of me and that little backstage picture.
That is a great matchmaker story. But you know who that is wonderful. I just will pretend I'm Tevye. But Craig Stewart Adams, we haven't heard from you. So what would be your wow story?
Well, thank you, Susan. I was in a Jewish.
Lauren, you're next,
Yeah.
so get ready. Okay.
So I'll give you the truncated version. I was in a Jewish fraternity, and that's a true story. I know it's hard to believe.
Which one?
Alpha Epsilon Pi.
Oh, you're an A Pi. Okay.
Yeah, in Boulder.
I was in a Pi too.
Were you? All right.
Yes, we're brothers.
Well, it's funny because what happened is, I was in a bar in Alaska, and I was actually working the bar, and so school started. I was trying to debate whether I was going to go back to school, and one of my customers said, named Bruce, said, "Hey, what are you so gloom about, Craig?" I said, "School started. I love Alaska, having a great time, but I don't know if I should go back to Boulder." And he goes, "Yeah, it's interesting. I just came back from Boulder, and I got a round trip ticket because it was cheaper than a one-way ticket. You can have the other half." And I thought, oh, that's God speaking to me. Next thing I know, I'm on a plane, I'm in school, but a week has gone by. There's no housing whatsoever. I see a little ad. I go in, it's the guys at AE Pi. And I said, well, I'm not Jewish. They said, well, tell us about yourself. I said, well, I was just in Anchorage running a bar. They said, you know how to mix drinks? I said, yes, you're in. And there you go.
That's
True
every
story.
AE Pi I knew. That is a great, but then you never know that the guy gives you the ticket. You never know. That is a great, oh wow story. And here's what happened. Just saying that, these two guys realized they are fraternity brothers. And Lauren, you're next. Could you unmute and share with us one of your stories? You're muted. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I couldn't quite hear that you were calling me Susan. Well, Craig's Alaskan story reminded me of one of my Alaskan stories. I used to consult for in Southeast Alaska. The tribe was called. And one time I was talking to one of the elders of the tribe, and I was curious. This guy was a chief. They have a very complicated system of who gets to be chief. And I was quizzing him about how he got to be chief. And the system among that tribe was that it passed down matrilineally. So he became chief because he was the nephew of an aunt, I guess, who was passed. And he had an uncle who was also a chief. And I said, and how did your uncle get to be a chief? And he said, well, that's an interesting story. He said, my uncle had 5 cousins. And so all 6 of them could have become chief. So one time my uncle called a meeting and he got them all together and he killed 4 of them. And he always said to me, son, he said, when you set out to kill somebody, make sure you get it done, because he said that guy was a pain in the ass the rest of my life. And then he just laughed about it. So that's my Alaskan story.
That's and matrilineally that's whoa, okay. Killing the competition now has a whole new meaning from that. And did I miss anyone? I just want to make sure. I know we've gone a little bit over. Oh, Richard Sachs, I apologize, sir. Please tell us one of your many stories. You're such an icon.
Well, thank you. Looking back on 94 years of living, there are a number of things that come to mind. The first one, of course, was why I left West Virginia at an early age. I could get a job in Miami for $275 a month, or Florida for $325. So, or California for 325. So I came to California, got involved, went to a number of schools, ended up getting a doctorate degree at Cal, and was very involved with the activities in San Francisco, president of the Haight-Ashbury, member of director of ACT. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. And most importantly was the 40 years I spent as a realtor. And I did a lot of things that as far as real estate involvement, but the most important thing in my estimation is when the San Francisco directors gave me the Richard Sachs Award, which every year has passed on. Betty Tisch has received one. So that's back to you, Susan. I appreciate the opportunity to let everybody know.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you this. Could you tell me what your doctorate is in?
It's actually in criminal justice. Hello.
Well, perfect for real estate. It's a perfect match.
It was a perfect match, wasn't it? But I never really did anything in it except it was nice. It was at University of California at Berkeley, and Joe Lohman, who was the sheriff, former sheriff of Cook County, was the dean of the school. So we became good friends, and he opened a lot of doors for me. Yeah.
And I'm old enough to, I believe in giving people their honorific, so I will continue to call you Dr. Sachs.
Oh,
and I think I did miss, and Hugh Tuck, I think I missed you, but I think you're kind of upside down in a car. Can we see you and go off mute and tell us one of your oh wow stories?
My only oh wow story is taking off from the Frogtown Airport in Angels Camp in a little Cessna 172. And it was fully loaded with people and a mini cart. And as we took off, the stall warning started beeping. And fortunately, my passenger was a former Navy pilot. And he said, "Put the nose down," which is hard to do when there's a mountain looming in front of you. But I listened to him, and I'm still alive today from the Frogtown Airport.
And of course, because Angels Camp is famous in literature, so there you go. I will remember the nose. Is that where the term nosedive comes from? I don't know.
You end up in a nosedive if you don't put the nose down.
Okay, there we go. All I can say is I thank everyone. I hope is Les still here? I can't tell because I can only see a certain amount of people. If there's anyone I missed, would you raise your own hand, not the one on the Zoom thing? Well, all I can say is this was Patricia's idea. She said that we all have fascinating stories, which I always think we do. But here's the problem. We never think our stories are fascinating or and interesting, but we always hear the nugget in other people's stories. So it's 9:03. Thank you for staying. You were the best presenters that we've had because we've gotten to know each and every one of you just a little bit better. And there was a nugget to be learned from each. Thank you for doing this. I know that Patricia and I put you on the spot, but you did well on that spot. And with that, I'm off.